All right, everybody, welcome back to the show for another deep dive. And today we have a really interesting one. It's a bit of a mystery.
Ooh, I love a good mystery.
Yeah, me too. And I think this one's going to be really intriguing for our listeners. So we're diving into the world of bad breath.
Okay.
But specifically, we have a listener who reached out, and they've been with their partner for 17 years.
Okay.
And here's the catch. The partner's got this persistent bad breath, but they've done all the dental work, they've got the hygiene routine down,
Yeah.
but the problem persists. So that's what makes this a deep dive worthy topic,
Right.
because we want to go beyond just the surface level advice
Mm,
and really try to figure out what could be going on.
absolutely. Because sometimes, even with the best hygiene practices, bad breath can linger.
Exactly. And that's where this deep dive comes in. We're lucky that our listener actually shared a Reddit thread with us that they
Oh,
posted
wow.
with tons of comments and suggestions from other people online. So that's where we're going to be starting our investigation today.
Love it, crowdsourcing.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, right off the bat, the usual suspect pops up, oral hygiene.
Of course, makes sense.
Right.
You'd be surprised, though, how often even the most meticulous brushers and flossers can miss the mark.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And actually, the thread really emphasized deep flossing, like getting in there, and even suggests using tools to help scrape off that tartar.
Oh, okay.
Someone even described it as food rotting between teeth, which, let's be honest, that's an image that stays with you.
Yeah, not a pretty picture.
No, not at all. So sometimes even with regular brushing and flossing, it's the technique that's key.
So maybe the listener's partner could benefit from, like, a dental hygienist's guidance on
Absolutely.
proper technique.
Yep, they can give you all the tips and tricks and show you how to use those tools like a tongue scraper.
Oh, yeah, the tongue scraper. I always forget about that.
That can make a world of difference.
Okay, so interesting. So it might not be as simple as just, brushing and flossing.
Right.
You got to have the technique down.
Exactly.
Now, early in the thread, tonsil stones were brought up.
Mm-hmm.
But the listener mentioned their partner doesn't have tonsils.
Oh.
So case closed, right?
Not so fast. You can actually still have tonsil stones without tonsils.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they form in those little crevices where the tonsils used to be,
Oh, wow.
and they can trap debris and bacteria, which lead to odor.
So even if the tonsils are gone, those little pockets can still cause problems.
Exactly. They're sneaky hiding out and causing that not-so-pleasant odor.
Ugh, that's so interesting. Okay, so we've got the oral hygiene, the tonsil stones, but another theme that kept popping up in the thread was mouth breathing.
Interesting.
And the listener did say that their partner is a mouth breather, and folks online were quick to point out the connection to bad breath.
Right.
So why is that such a big deal?
Well, think about it. Mouth breathing dries out your mouth, and saliva is crucial for washing away food particles and neutralizing those odor-causing bacteria.
Oh, okay.
So less saliva equals more opportunity for bad breath to develop.
So it's like your mouth's natural defense system gets compromised. That's interesting. And actually, that reminds me, some people were suggesting mouth tape as a solution.
Oh, yeah. Mouth tape can be really helpful. It encourages nasal breathing while you sleep, which keeps things nice and moist.
Okay.
And this is where it gets really interesting. You mentioned the listener's partner had some unaddressed nasal issues as a child.
Right. They said something about like a deviated septum, maybe?
Exactly. Someone even speculated about that. So childhood issue could still be affecting their breathing today.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, it just highlights how interconnected our bodies are and why an ENT specialist might be helpful in this case.
Okay.
They could identify any underlying structural issues that might be affecting their nasal breathing.
So we've got oral hygiene potential breathing issues as possible culprits, but the Reddit thread went even deeper.
Oh,
Like there were a lot of comments pointing to systemic issues that could be at play.
right, because bad breath isn't always a simple fix. It can be a sign of something else happening in the body.
Like a warning sign.
Exactly, like a canary in a coal mine alluding us to a deeper issue.
Okay, so the thread mentioned a whole bunch of potential causes, like a laundry list almost.
Wow.
So let's start with just the basics, dehydration and alcohol.
Okay, sure. Both of those can dry out your mouth, which, as we know, is a recipe for bad breath.
Right.
Alcohol in particular is dehydrating, and its breakdown products can add to that odor.
Now, the listener did mention that they and their partner don't really drink, and they're very conscious about staying hydrated.
Okay, good to know.
So we can probably cross those off the list.
Yeah.
But next up is postnasal drip, which was mentioned quite a bit.
Okay.
Honestly, before reading this thread, I never would have connected postnasal drip to bad breath.
Yeah, it's not an immediate connection, but think about it. You have that excess mucus dripping down your throat,
Okay.
carrying bacteria, and as it breaks down, it releases those unpleasant odors.
Huh, interesting. Okay, that makes sense. What about sinus issues? Could those be contributing as well?
Absolutely. Sinus issues often lead to mouth breathing, which we already talked about.
Right, right.
Plus, infections in the sinuses themselves can produce some pretty foul-smelling mucus.
So going back to the ENT specialist, addressing any sinus problems could help with the breath as well.
You got it. It's all connected.
Wow, the body's so complex.
It really is.
All right, so let's talk about acid reflux or GERD, another potential culprit that came up
Yeah.
frequently.
Another sneaky one, when stomach acid flows back up into the esophagus, it can carry odors that contribute to bad breath.
Oh, so it's not just heartburn.
Nope, it can affect your breath too.
Okay, acid reflux, got it. Another commenter mentioned diabetes as a potential cause.
Right. Uncontrolled diabetes can lead to the body breaking down fat for energy and producing ketones,
Okay.
which have a distinct, often fruity or acetone-like smell on the breath.
So if the listener's partner has any other signs of diabetes, that's definitely worth checking out.
For sure. Now, someone also mentions CKD or chronic kidney disease.
Okay, is that a common cause of bad breath?
It's less common than some of the others and usually comes with other symptoms, but CKD can cause a buildup of waste products in the blood, which can then be excreted through the breath, creating an ammonia-like odor. And important to note that CKD can also lead to other metabolic changes like altered mineral balance, which can indirectly affect oral health and contribute to bad breath.
Okay, so while CKD is less likely without other symptoms, it's still something to be aware of.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears to gut health.
Okay.
Several comments highlighted the role of diet and probiotics in addressing bad breath.
That makes sense considering our gut bacteria play a big role in digestion and the overall balance of microorganisms in our bodies.
Right. Imbalances in gut bacteria can lead to a whole host of issues, and bad breath might be one of them. It's a reminder that sometimes the answers lie within literally.
Okay, so good health check. Now, the listener mentioned their partner smokes, and a few commenters pointed to that as a likely culprit.
Yeah, and for good reason. Smoking dries out the mouth, irritates the gums, and leaves behind that lingering smell of tobacco.
Ugh, it's basically a triple whammy for bad breath.
It really is.
So definitely something to consider given the partner's smoking habit. Last but not least, the thread also brought up medications as a potential factor.
Right. Some medications can cause dry mouth as a side effect, which we know is a major contributor to bad breath. Others can be metabolized in a way that releases odors through the breath.
So another thing to keep in mind, perhaps the listener could chat with a doctor to see if any of their partner's medications could be contributing.
That's a great suggestion. It's always best to consult a healthcare professional for personalized advice.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground just in this first part of our deep dive, but I think
really,
we've already uncovered so many potential causes and we're just getting started.
just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. So stay tuned because in the next part, we're going to delve into some advice from the Reddit thread on how to actually talk to your partner about this sensitive issue.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, because it's one thing to figure out what might be causing the bad breath, but it's a whole other challenge to actually approach the conversation with your partner in a way that's,
Right.
sensitive and supportive and doesn't make them feel bad.
Absolutely. So stay tuned.
We'll be right back after the break.
So, it's one thing to try and figure out what's causing the bad breath,
Right.
but it's a whole other challenge to actually, bring it up with your partner.
Exactly. And I think that's what our listener is really struggling with.
Yeah.
How do you approach this conversation
Right.
in a way that's sensitive and, doesn't hurt their feelings?
Exactly.
And thankfully, the Reddit thread had a lot of really good advice and tips on how to navigate this conversation.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah, so one suggestion that really stood out to me was to approach it from a health concern angle
Okay.
rather than just focusing on, oh, your breath smells bad.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
It kind of shifts the focus away from blame and more towards,
Right.
we're in this together, let's figure out what's going on.
Yeah. A shared journey.
Exactly. And there was a comment about, praising the partner's hygiene efforts.
Okay.
Hey, I know you're brushing and flossing regularly,
Right.
but I'm concerned that maybe something else is contributing to this.
I love that approach because it validates them,
Yeah,
but also opens the door to explore other possibilities
exactly.
without making them feel defensive.
And then another great tip was to just simply ask the partner if they've noticed anything different about their breath lately.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes just opening up that line of communication
Right.
can be enough to,
Exactly.
get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
And if they haven't noticed anything, then you can gently be like, well, actually, I have noticed this. And,
Right.
I'm a little bit concerned.
Right. And coming from a place of care.
Yeah,
Not from a place of judgment.
exactly. It's about being a team,
Exactly.
working together to figure this out.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Exactly. And speaking of teamwork, someone also suggested proposing a checkup together.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it kind of frames it as like a shared health journey.
Mm-hmm.
We're both going to go get checked out. Make
Right.
sure everything's okay.
Yeah, and red breath is just a side effect
Right, exactly.
of good overall.
And there are also some great tips on how to actually have the conversation.
Okay.
Like choosing a private, relaxed setting,
Mm-hmm.
avoiding accusatory language,
Right.
using I statements to express your feelings and concerns.
Right.
All those good communication strategies
Right.
that can help make the conversation, more productive,
Yeah.
less confrontational.
Right. Because you want to be honest, but also compassionate and supportive.
Exactly. So we've
Okay.
covered a lot of ground today. We started with that Reddit thread,
Right.
which gave us a great overview of all the potential causes,
Yeah.
from oral hygiene to tonsil stones, mouth breathing,
Systemic issues.
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we've delved into this really important aspect of how to actually communicate with your partner about this,
Right.
openly and honestly, but also in a way that's caring
Mm-hmm.
and supportive.
Yeah.
So it's been a truly fascinating deep dive, I think,
Yeah.
into the often overlooked world of bad breath.
Right. Because we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah, and it really highlights how interconnected our bodies are
It does.
and how these seemingly unrelated issues
Yeah.
can manifest in these surprising ways.
Right.
So what does this all mean for our listener?
Mm.
Well, they've got a lot to think about
They do.
and some potential avenues to explore.
Right.
Maybe it's worth revisiting those oral hygiene techniques with their partner.
Right.
Maybe exploring those unaddressed nasal issues from childhood.
Right.
Perhaps delving into gut health,
Mm-hmm.
considering the impact of smoking.
Yeah.
And, of course, that open and honest conversation with their partner is key.
Absolutely.
Approaching it as a team with compassion and support can make all the difference in finding a solution and ultimately strengthen their relationship.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave the listener with one final thought.
Okay.
As they continue to explore these potential causes, I want them to pay attention to the specific smell of their partner's breath.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like, is it sweet? Is it sour? Is it something else entirely? Because just like different types of pain can signal different underlying issues, different breath odors can provide valuable clues,
Ah, that's a good point.
right? So it can help narrow down the possibilities and guide further investigation.
You're like a detective.
Exactly.
Using your senses.
So it's like being a detective using all the clues to solve the mystery.
Love it.
So only you can decide how to use what we've discussed today.
Right.
But remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Absolutely not.
We're always here to support you with more fascinating deep dives into the mysteries of the human body. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, but, it all kind of boils down to this. Bad breath, even with good hygiene, can be this complex issue with so many different potential causes.
Absolutely. And as we've seen, it's honest a sign of, something else going on in the body, whether it's a structural issue or a systemic imbalance, or even just like a little quirk in our anatomy.
It's amazing how interconnected everything is.
It really is.
And it's a good reminder that, we shouldn't just mask the symptoms, but really try to understand that root cause.
Exactly. And that's where those clues, like the specific smell of the breath, can become so important.
Right.
They help guide us in the right direction.
So what does this all mean for our listener? Well, they've got a starting point for their investigation. They can revisit those oral hygiene techniques, consider those childhood nasal issues, explore gut health, think about the impact of smoking, and most importantly, have that open and honest conversation with their partner.
And, approach it as a team like we talked about.
Exactly.
And remember, knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
The more we understand about our bodies and, the potential causes of things like bad breath, the better equipped we are to address them effectively and compassionately.
And that's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive, empowering you with information.
Exactly.
So we hope this episode has given you the tools and the insights to tackle this mystery.
Yeah. And who
really-
knows, maybe solving this case will lead to, even greater discoveries about your partner's overall health and well-being.
Right, it's all connected.
It is.
So what does this all mean? Only you can decide how to use what we've discussed today. We've given you the tools and the insights. Now it's time to put them into action.
You got this.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We're always here to support you with more fascinating deep dives into the mysteries of the human body. And speaking of support, if you're enjoying these deep dives, you want to help us spread knowledge, there are a couple things you could do.
Yes, we would love for you to subscribe to our podcast, Voices of the Soul.
Yes.
And our YouTube channel, Shauna Polich.
Your support really helps us reach more curious minds like yours, and we truly appreciate it.
We do.
So we'll be back next time with another fascinating deep dive. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds engaged.
Bye, everyone.